Unfortunately, the pandemic came over, wiped us overnight. The silver lining was that we had just raised our first $1 million in funding, led by Founders Fund.
Bilyana, welcome to the show. You are the co-founder and CEO of Orbiit, a one-on-one matchmaking tool using AI to make meaningful connections. You raised a couple of rounds of funding based out of New York and recently have been acquired by Hivebrite, where you now have a full-time role. Tell us in your own words about Orbiit and the story so far.
Hi, James. Well, thank you so much for having me. Absolute pleasure to be here today. Orbiit, as you very well said, facilitates one-to-one, personalized, smart, one-to-one introductions within existing communities at scale, helping global communities really make the experience personal, intimate, and really help members maximize the value of being part of those networks. Funny enough, we didn't start doing that, actually. We were first founded in 2018, and my co-founder and I were always guided by this mission and belief that you learn best from other people. And we really took it like an extra couple of steps. We were matching people for in-person job shadowing experiences. So imagine being a product manager at Citibank, spending a day with a product manager at Uber, really seeing firsthand and experiencing a new environment, taking back innovation, inspiration to your role. We consistently heard that these experiences were life-changing. Unfortunately, the pandemic came over, wiped us overnight. The silver lining was that we had just raised our first $1 million in funding, led by Founders Fund, our seed round and seed investor at the time. So we could take the time to think about, well, is this it? Are we throwing the towel? What can we do over here? And we just realized the world in that time of lockdown and in general, I mean, it needed connection more than ever before. So we took what was really core to the experience, the one-to-one format, the peer matching, and we decided to pivot into a software that facilitates that for multiple communities rather than just kind of build our own. And we rebranded alongside the pivot. I welcomed my first child, a daughter, around that time. So summer of 2020 was the most creative, productive time of my life. About 8 months later, we did raise another seed round for the new version of the company, which is, of course, Orbiit.ai. And we were off to the races ever since until our acquisition by Hivebrite, which is the all-in-one community management and engagement platform, pretty much doing everything else other than one-to-one connections. So it was a really great match with a lot of mutual customers that kind of nudged us towards this outcome.
Amazing. What an incredible story. I think let's go straight back to the beginning, right? All good stories, chapter one. Let's start at the beginning. Orbiit, or at the time it was Hopin, but we'll call it Orbiit for now. How did that idea come about? What made you sort of go, oh yeah, I want to partner up with this co-founder? Co-founders are important if that's the route you choose to take. So that's sort of question one. But the second part is, where did the idea come from?
Now we're really going to go quite a few years back. So even though the business was started in New York, I studied politics and economics at the London School of Economics. At the time, entrepreneurship was not something that was kind of I don't know, it's just not something that the school was nudging us towards, or in hindsight was even kind of an option. It was pretty much finance or consulting. I ended up in finance, the Royal Bank of Scotland in 2009, basically a year after the big financial crash, in the risk management department, rebuilding the bank. So very different background to a lot of, tech founders, or when you think about the classic founder kind of archetype of an MIT MIT dropout. No, former risk management analyst over here in a British bank. But I did have a career-changing moment after a shadowing experience where I spent the day with a team that looks after the private wealth of entrepreneurs. So I was literally working kind of in a basement, doing this anti-money laundering work, due diligence on clients. And then in one day, kind of went 24/7 floors above to actually sit in client meetings, meet a couple of the country's most prominent entrepreneurs, and just experience an unparalleled level of inspiration. So I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And it was actually such a great fit with the team. They were like, actually, you really do belong here. And even after one day of job shadowing, they gave me an opportunity to switch. So seeing how one day or even one conversation could be not just career, but I genuinely believe kind of life-changing, was really inspiring. I put it in the back pocket, had an incredible run with that kind of team for 5 years. Fast forward, kind of after 7 years in finance, I really had this nagging feeling that I'm kind of being left behind, and actually tech as an industry is disrupting everything. And if I'm not in tech, I'm on the kind of receiving end of the disruption. And I was like, even though I'm now approaching the next decade, 30s, that would be a big industry shift. I'm kind of someone that really likes a hard reset every now and again. And after 7 years in finance, I quit. I packed my bag. I decided to make it like extra big of a moved to New York with a British ed tech company called Decoded, which is where I met my co-founder. So he was also ex-finance, and we were like, my God, don't you just feel like we're just living in a different universe that is inaccessible to so many people, but also that there's so many biases, what people in tech believed a career in finance looks like, and finance in tech. And we had this like magical perspective where you see how much people have to learn from each other, and still with all the information that we have at our fingertips, how actually kind of divided we are, and how much more there is to be done to really bring perspectives together. We worked very well. So my co-founder is Luke Dirksen. He was on the product and engineering team. I was always more on the business development side. Very organic partnership. We were working really well together. We then confided in each other that we had both actually done kind of experiments and a first very kind of small business. Mine was in organic baby clothes while I was working in finance at a time when
natural synergy.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah, I've done a few experiments, but the takeaway from that experience was, if I'm ever doing this again, find a business partner that truly complements me, and it's very easy to see, kind of divide and conquer, trust each other, but make sure that all critical parts of the business are covered and we're not stepping on each other's toes, and they're very natural synergies. So even though now Orbiit is an AI-powered business, I cannot write a single line of code. Luke is the .ai in Orbiit, and at the same time he kind of realized we had this cheesy thing of we were calling each other my CTO, my CEO, with hashtag my CEO, let's do this, hashtag my CTO. It was just very organic. We had this confidence that we're going to make a good team, and we bonded over the idea that you learn best from people, and the world needs mechanism to connect people better to each other.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, you had that personal experience as well, which I think is a clear narrative to starting Hopin or Orbiit brand. What made you pull the trigger? There's a big difference between joking around with a friend and colleague and sort of saying we probably could do this. I think pretty much everyone who's never started a business, and those that have done that kind of conversation over a pizza slice or a beer or whatever that may look like. But there's a big difference to actually going out. Obviously today we can look back at it. You had great success with that, but we'll get to that. What made you pull the trigger? What was the defining day where you both just hand in the resignations and go, let's do this?
This is a brilliant question, and somebody else delivered the answer, and when I heard it, was like, oh my God, this is it. YC Startup School, by the way, it's an incredible resource that I recommend to anyone thinking about starting a business. But they have this like library of videos, and I watched a YouTube video by one of Facebook's early execs or kind of shadow co-founders. But anyhow, and there's a talk there called Why Start a Startup? And he kind of demystifies all reasons one by one. And you definitely don't start it for freedom or financial gains. Like logically, there are much better things to do. You start a company when you can no longer like live without starting it. And that was very much the point for us. We came up with the idea, Luke and I, and we still continued working for a few times. And I would be sometimes, taking a meeting in New York where the elevator is opening up and I'm seeing Condé Nast and then a bank and then a fashion company, and just like seeing the world divided by floors. And I was like, no, we need to start. Like we need to break barriers. This needs to exist. We need to I can't believe it's down to us, but somebody has to do it, and it's not happening, and we're just going to do it. So he resigned first. I resigned a couple of months later. And then, the milestones are starting a business sounds like super grand. And then you just do these like little steps by steps. You incorporate, you find a good lawyer, you incorporate, you open now it's a legal entity, and then the bank account, and then you throw a couple of thousand in, and you start playing around with the brand and the name. And before you know it, you kind of have a business, or at least the foundations of a business, and it's real. And it's actually really not that hard. It's all in here. It's all about taking the decision and taking the plunge. And once you actually take those kind of practical steps, kind of you see how easy is it. Then it kind of catapults you, and it just starts unfolding. Then you just start putting one foot in front of the other, and it becomes more real faster than you think.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. So you've pulled the trigger. You are now doing this business. You don't have an office anymore. You're working from home. You're on the laptop. You're speaking to Luke every day. Some nice energies. My co-founder, my former business was also at Luke, so it feels weird saying that. But there's a big difference. You've been going into the office every day. You've been around 100,000 other people, and suddenly you're working from a laptop. You have an idea, you build this out. Luke, obviously being technical, superb asset to your team. You yourself leading, the other half of that business sort of offering. First customer. How does it happen? What can you remember what happened when that first customer got locked in and signed?
I do. I honestly, I was such a weirdo with that first customer. But basically, again, big jump. And actually, for us, we had a long distance partnership because at the time he was in London preparing to relocate to New York. So we're both separately on the laptops. And at the time, this is super normalized, right? But at the time, it was kind of a big deal that you're starting a business. You're not in the same room. So I'm in New York hustling. I first, it was a marketplace, right? So first I started hustling within my own network, identifying people that are doing really interesting things, maybe more like solopreneurs, sustainable jewelry designer. I was doing hip hop dancing, asking my choreographer who had a side hustle as well, would you be up for being shadowed? I think we built about 10 experiences, built a website very quickly, made the design look amazing. I think design is something that always makes you look kind of bigger than you are. We very quickly looked like we're live and punching above our weight. Our Instagram page was looking incredible. And then one day we got a booking from actually a Dutch girl visiting New York, and she booked to shadow a fashion influencer for half a day. Awesome. And they were going to spend some time in Central Park. So I was literally like in that first shadowing experience, kind of hiding in the bushes. And just watching that interaction unfold, and kind of just not believing my eyes and of course I can't remember now if we told that girl that she was the first shadower. I think at some point we might have afterwards, but we had planned everything so well, and you could see it's going really well. And I showed up at the end being like, oh, I had a meeting in the neighborhood, and I just wanted to introduce ourselves. Thank you so much for booking this experience. How was it? And she was like, yeah, it's incredible, but I could just see something is on her mind. And I was like, okay, what did we forget? At some point she was like, I'm really sorry. We haven't had a restroom break for like 5 hours. Can we go somewhere?
Oh my
This is
gosh.
the only way you learn, right? They were kind of shooting in Central Park and talking and walking and giving kind of all the best practices and working with a photographer. And yeah, you live and you learn, you iterate. So yeah, learn that lesson.
Oh my gosh, amazing. I mean, yeah, I can understand why she might have been a little distracted. So you kind of faked it till you maked it to a point, right? You've built a beautiful design, which I'm sure Luke supported and did and made you guys look massive. And in reality, you were, well, as your words, not mine, hiding in the bushes for that first customer, which is incredible. Obviously, from then, you started to grow significantly and eventually led to a pre-seed round led by Founders Forum, is it?
Founders Fund.
Founders Fund, exactly.
Yeah.
How was that? That initial traction that led you to make the decision to go funding? Not everyone does that.
Yeah.
What made you guys think that was the right
know what?
route?
One thing that has always made just the biggest difference is how obsessed we were with the mission and how much conviction we had in it. And when you put such a strong belief and conviction into something, people follow you on that journey and they want to be a part of it. And when you're in an environment like New York, or any entrepreneurial environment, right? When you're in an environment where you meet people and you tell them about your idea and what you're doing, the universe conspires and they just want to be a part of it. And what I would say what we also did really well is pretty quickly we started kind of, again, just punching above our weight and attracting really incredible brands to offer these shadowing opportunities. So we very quickly attracted the likes of, as I said, Uber, Eventbrite, like top tech companies,
Which
fashion.
is insane.
Yeah.
Like, to interrupt, that's insane. Like, people are going, wow, like, how quickly did that happen? Was that in the first 12, 18 months you were attracting these sort of brands? How did you do that?
Yeah.
That was your responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Tell us, what's the secret? How do we all get in the room of these enterprise businesses?
Yeah, I'm a one-trick pony, and it is, building a network, nurturing the network, being there for the network, and then when the time comes, making an ask to the network. So it was literally kind of one contact at a time, unpacking, having one powerful shadowing experience and then asking people, okay, who in your network do you think will really enjoy doing this? So initially it was very much like do the things that don't scale, roping in kind of friends, whoever can participate and was crazy enough to give it a shot. Photographing it, storytelling, a lot of storytelling again on social media, following people on the subway, how, a chief people officer of a Series B startup takes along a freelancer into their meetings in the kitchen. A lot of behind the scenes. You show people a little bit behind the curtain and they're like, wow, I want to be part of it. The other thing is that a lot of the hosts soon realized that there was a lot of benefit to getting a fresh perspective themselves. Initially, people thought that only the shadower benefits.
Right, exactly.
But actually, there was a lot of, wow, it was so refreshing spending a day with someone that is able to see me in my element and offer a perspective on what's happening, how I run a meeting, because it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? The people that want to connect with others in this meaningful way, whether for a digital one-to-one or a shadowing experience, want to learn. They're curious, intellectually curious, and a lot of them have to offer something themselves. So build credibility as much as possible. Be generous to your network. So when you really need your network, they show up and say yes. Tell the stories to get that amplifier effect. I think, and there's a lot of serendipity. I think when you're on the right track, really the universe conspires to help you. I ended up having dinner and a friend was hearing the story. She absolutely loved what we do. She's like, hey, one of my friends writes the career column of Forbes. So next thing you know, there's an article in Forbes about us. And then we got into a New York-based SaaS accelerator run by Forum Ventures. They were incredible and probably the first time we were kind of actually now on the map. on a certain trajectory because we were bootstrapped before. We had a few super powerful experiences. They saw the potential of the business, especially for more like B2B enterprise kind of shadowing and connectivity, leadership development. We raised an angel round with them, and one of those angels was the introduction to Founders Fund. The deal was led by Delian Asparuhov, who at the time was focusing on future of work. He now focuses on space and actually has his own space startup called Varda. So it's been really fascinating just working with incredible people as part of this journey.
Yeah, amazing. So you got that initial traction, you raised a bit of money, and things looking good for you and Luke. And then the world had other ideas. COVID. You are built on meaningful connections, in-person connections. You can't do that anymore. Business ends, right? But it didn't. So pivot. You mentioned it at the start of the podcast. You pivoted significantly. And that is actually what became Orbiit. At the time, it wasn't actually called Orbiit, right? It was called Hopin.
Yeah.
So that's when Orbiit was born. Tell us through, March 2020. The world had other ideas for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny because in late February 2020, I was on a business trip to London meeting the global head of learning and development at JP Morgan. And we literally had a handshake deal with a sanitizer that we're going to be sending the 200 kind of director level executives of JP Morgan shadowing at startups and scale ups.
Oh, wow.
So this was super exciting. And I remember taking a call with our Founders Fund investor from London. And I'm like, hey, I'm here. This is amazing. It's happening. But the vibe over here is very eerie. Everybody's talking about this virus. Some people are getting sick. Like it was, I felt it in London a lot more than in New York the prior week. It was just like an active topic of conversation, and he was like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, ignore that. Just focus on the deal." Great. I fly back. I get fever during the flight. I land, and I was really, really sick for 2 weeks. And I was 6 months pregnant at the time, so it was an extremely scary time. It was one of the first cases of COVID in New York. My OBGYN was like, don't come in. We can't help you. It was just such an unknown at the time, but I was like just coughing my lungs out. So that really put things into perspective because to reemerge, thank God, healthy and, with still kind of a healthy baby, she was kicking and
amazing.
That just really put things into perspective. So kind of when you reemerge on the other side and you realize, okay, the business is dead, but I'm alive and my family is alive. That helped a little bit soften the blow. Then I take another call with Founders Fund, and they're like, okay, so we had a huddle with Peter Thiel, and we basically, our point of view now is that the world life and world the way you know it is not going to be the same for the next 2 years. And it was like telling me that there has been a confirmed spotting of aliens. It was just so crazy at the time. If you take yourself back to that March, we were like, we're going to be in lockdown for how long? 2 to 4 weeks?
Yeah.
Oh my God, the world is going to end. What am I going to do for 1 month? And
what incredible foresight from the team at Founders as well.
Yeah. So I always say that the moral of the story is just take smart money. It makes a difference. It's really not just about capital. There is enough capital out there if you're really building something meaningful and you're persistent enough to get it. Be picky and don't settle, and find smart money that is also value aligned. That's also super, super important. So we decided, honestly, it sounded like the craziest thing to us at the time, but we decided to adopt that timeline. We were getting a lot of well-intentioned but misguided advice. Wait it out, give it a couple of months. Maybe, you can relaunch in September, continue working those enterprise deals. And we're like, no, the future is more remote, more hybrid. People are not going to be in offices as much. So we kind of like projected and started building for a new reality. We started matching our own community for virtual interactions because everybody said, you know what, digital shadowing, we're a bit more aware of cyber risk. People were more comfortable with in-person shadowing, but not so much digital. Everybody said, I would love to speak to others about, navigating this remote world, managing remotely, in the time when we were all scrambling and everyone wanted information, but nobody had the answers. So we were essentially piecing the answers together, one conversation at a time. So we very quickly repurposed our matching algorithm. We kind of built that intentionality. When you're putting strangers in a room for a day, you think through a lot. Maybe not from the first experience. Then we obviously, then we built in the restroom breaks, but we were really, really intentional about those in-person experiences, took that format, kind of started applying the agenda, the making sure that you're really matching people who are interested in the same challenges, have similar years of work experience, work in the same industry, their calendars are aligned, and making it super seamless. And then a lot of course, we were community builders ourselves. All our kind of fellow community managers were like, what are you, how are you guys matching your community? What's going on? And we're like, oh, we were purposed and it was very organic. Can we use it? And then the penny dropped. Wow, this could be something that helps not just us, but it could be customizable, and it could be a really impactful solution if communities can brand it, customize their matching criteria, and apply it to their communities. So this is the direction we started pursuing.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm sure you're able to share at least some rough numbers from where you're at in a position pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And you thought, I've got a business here and we're doing well. We're literally flying across the globe to make deals happen, to potentially where that happened a year later. How was that traction to potentially, where it ended up? Sort of when you actually took it fully digital.
Yeah. So Hobin essentially from kind of like launch, okay, let's just see. So the job shadowing concept, we were probably like 8 months live. We had done a good couple of hundreds of experiences. We were experimenting a lot with the pricing. We started very low, thinking that it would be more B2C, increase the experiences incrementally to $500 per experience. So, the revenue wasn't necessarily kind of anything through the roof, but in terms of traction, especially with the brands, we were just about to close these enterprise contracts. So yeah, when you think about traction at that time, it was, we had probably done about 200 experiences or kind of that ballpark, but with incredible organizations. We had done a lot of price experiments, a lot of tests. So in terms of revenue, it was early stage at the time. I would say anything between around 30,000 maybe, but it was more we were just about to close these enterprise contracts, right? I mean, they were literally on the table, never quite put the signature on them. But the brands participating were incredible. People were absolutely raving about the experiences. So we raised the seed round really more on kind of the proof of concept at the time. And yeah, it was kind of $1 million in total, 300K angels, and then a 700 VC check.
So you're a year into COVID and you then take another round of funding, $2.7 million. So a step up, and you're seeing the new wave of traction, of digital traction, I suppose.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. Second time fundraising round, a female co-founder. You're very much the face of the brand. Did you get any sort of pushback as a female founder when you're going into these rooms? Or I guess it was digital rooms
at
the
the
time.
Digital rooms, yes.
So you raised that money. You were very much the face of the brand. Was there any barriers as a female founder? And do you have any advice for fundraising founders in general, right, in the tech space?
That was a very different experience from the first fundraising, from the first time fundraising, when you're actually on that plane to San Francisco, going from fund to fund, coffee shop to coffee shop, et cetera, et cetera. What was really interesting was that after the pivot, after we became Orbiit, our beachhead market ended up being VC funds. So they were actually the first client to really see the potential of peer connections and how much value they can bring to their portfolio companies, matching relevant, founder to founder, CMO to CMO, but really taking it down to like also junior talent and kind of elevate that peer learning and networking and idea sharing at scale. Again, especially at that time when all of a sudden kind of everyone spread around, remote work, they were no longer able to do their events. And even then, events are a one-off. And this was something that they saw the power of systematic networking and knowledge sharing. And the first results were, again, phenomenal. We would start working with the likes of Sequoia Capital, Inside Partners, NEA, and start getting 100% NPS from their participating portfolio companies.
Wow.
Yeah. 80%. Over 80% would say they'll take a better decision as a result of these conversations. And of course, better decisions lead to better outcomes. And you were really seeing kind of even unicorn founders and C-level execs regularly participating and saying, these are the chats that move the needle the most because I can connect with someone that's literally at the same stage, working on the same issue, and we exchange best practices. And of course, these connections also have a cumulative effect because you connect, then you make follow-on introductions, or you turn it into a recurrent meeting and you continue to extract the value from that spark that Orbiit first facilitated. So we work with VCs, and somebody told me it's much easier to actually get an investment check from a VC than getting them to pay for a tool. So you're on the right path. That did not turn out to be true. We were raising in 2021, which, if you remember, was kind of all about crypto. So all of a sudden, and there were a couple of kind of big names in community at the time, Clubhouse and Lunch Club. They had raised big rounds from Valley funds, and they did that before us. And we were something else, right? We were a software. A B2B software platform anyway, but it felt like, okay, there's these kind of big companies in community that we're betting on, which, by the way, neither of them are kind of around or kind of on life support at the moment, which is a shame because I did enjoy the odd lunch match. And then crypto, everyone is obsessed with crypto. So, and I'm doing this virtually from a lockdown. So it definitely was a very humbling experience. You're also not able to bring your energy into the room. I think that's something that personally has worked well for me in the past, because yeah, again, as I said, that strong conviction, that ability to articulate the business, being prepared, and being able to like light the room up. So that's not happening. And but fortunately, we actually ended up raising ultimately from a couple of our clients that saw the value so much for their portfolio and were inherently believers in community. So the round was led by Bread and Butter Ventures and the partner Mary Grove, who I also loved. That is a female founder. I'm raising from she's an ex-Googler, super talented. She actually started Google for startups. She was director of Google for startups globally, around the network, experienced the friction around kind of more event-based community building, which leaves a lot to be desired kind of in between. 100% like understood what Orbiit is about right away. Love that she's a mom herself. To this day, we're just like exchanging voice notes and like miss you. Just incredible when you work with someone that's value aligned. And ultimately, in terms of advice, whether you're male or female founder, I think just be prepared, get that traction, have that strong conviction, and try to learn from the no's. Don't let it get to you. Keep persevering. The capital is there, and it just takes honestly, it's just all about perseverance and determination, and I think that comes naturally when you're really passionate about what you're building.
This episode is sponsored by Opus. Opus brings entrepreneurs together to create opportunity through power of connection. Opus is a curated community for business builders who understand that relationships are the backbone of business and success. If you are an entrepreneur, founder, business builder, laser focused on a mission, Opus could be for you too. To find out more, go to joinopus.org. Now back to the show. I want to come back to family in a second, actually. You're a mother of two children. Is it two daughters?
An older daughter and a younger son.
Daughter and a younger son. Amazing. So I'll come back to that in a second, because running a business and growing a business and a family is quite a challenge in its own right. acquisition, where your current employer, Hivebrite, comes on the table. This happened in mid-2024. How did that happen? Was that something you were looking for? And it's all gone very well.
Yes, yeah, that was that's another story, right? So trying to arrange things, to present things in a chronological order. So we raised the seed round in 2021, 2022. Actually, the day my son was born was the day the Russia-Ukraine war started. And literally everything changed that day. I was supposed to reemerge from my 2-month mat leave. Do not recommend, side note, and go straight into Series A fundraising. Again, that kind of reemerging and just seeing how, I mean, it was just palpable, right? How tough the market had become. So we were like, okay, we tried a little bit, but it just felt like the goalpost has shifted. I think even if we were to have achieved the milestones that we had a few months earlier, we could have been squarely kind of like, okay, potential Series A company. But yeah, everything, all the metrics, the goalpost has shifted. So we were not able to raise and started basically following into that journey of, okay, cost cutting, taking some tough decisions, basically heading for profitability. We did eventually get there.
Amazing.
And then I think as a founder and CEO, you have to be, I don't know, we just always think about genuinely what would be best for the team, for the customers. And I know we all set out to ring the bell, right? And that is the vision. But is there a scenario here where everyone will be better off if we join forces with someone and we don't let, I don't know, ego or a misguided ambition get in the way? So we, even though, reaching profitability was empowering, ultimately you do that by just cutting to the point where everybody's like doing 5 jobs. Realistically, you're not able to innovate as fast as you wish. And you're kind of looking at this very long and uncertain horizon where you would be able to raise and be kind of in a growth mode again. And I genuinely believe that we would have gotten there, but it just felt like another kind of long, potentially hurdle that we have to go through. And with the history of the pivot and everything, and at the same time, as we're having those musings, what would be the best kind of next stage for us? We were having amazing kind of communities, like, for example, Pavilion, the go-to-market, the community for leading go-to-market professionals, high growth, 10,000 members, going and evaluating and revamping their community tech stack and completely independently choosing Hivebrite as the best in class community home for their members, and choosing Orbiit to be kind of the soul and that layer of engagement that brings it all to life and allows still a personal interaction for members that are globally distributed. And then nudging us towards, hey, is there an integration? Do you guys know each other? You should talk. We already had a few mutual clients as well that had been saying this. So in the end, a couple of our team members got connected. Then Jean Hamon, the founder of Hivebrite, and I eventually had a chat. And it was again, just such a values fit from the first conversation. And going back, it's just another sign that actually you're on the right track. The values are right. Jean has been running Hivebrite for 12 years. I had so much respect for someone that has stayed the course. When you've been building for 12 years, again, very much like us, that you're passionate about this. They work with incredible communities. We had kind of like dominated Silicon Valley and working with top logos there and incredible tech companies like Atlassian, Sprout Social, where we connect their customer communities. And then on Hivebrite's end, you have They're leaders in alumni community engagement, for example, working with Stanford, Brown, MIT, Princeton, like bringing the A game in every category that they work in. So even though we were much smaller, we kind of both were committed to the missions, both were committed to excellence, having incredible clients, very value aligned. Jean, also a dad, we bonded over being just founder parents, and the struggle is real, whether you're a mom or a dad. He has one, though. He always says, I don't know how you do it with two. It's been a struggle. And we saw this vision of like 1 + 1 does not equal 2. It actually equals 3 here, because we can really amplify and our kind of products and visions and really truly become the most powerful community management and engagement platform on the market, which, we announced in July. We've done the integration now.
Amazing.
My new title is VP of Growth of Orbiit for Hivebrite. And I am really enjoying all of a sudden like being catapulted into scale, right? We missed a few steps. So I mean, I'll be transparent. The first month navigating a much larger company, that's also remote, because we were used to our chaos, right? When you know your chaos, it's fine, but it's our chaos. And then all of a sudden you're thrown to like a remote bigger company. It took me a couple of weeks to kind of find my bearing. Yeah. But I love Hivebrite and being part of the Hivebrite family now. And it's just really exciting to see how many of their customers just immediately added Orbiit to their solutions, and vice versa. We've been able to introduce Hivebrite to communities that are ready to have that flagship home for their members.
Amazing. How quick did you wrap up the acquisition deal? Was it quite a swift sort of exit for you?
I wish it was not. Okay, yeah, good question. My advice here is, try to avoid working with French lawyers.
Fair enough.
Yes, yeah. Jean and I were very committed to making this happen as quickly as possible. And I had, even though I'm originally from Bulgaria, I lived for 14 years in the UK and only for 6 in America, but I kind of really adopted that US pace of things. We have an incredible lawyer that's, again, that New York kind of 24/7 availability and mentality. But did not find that same experience with French lawyers. Hivebrite is headquartered in Paris with global offices, but ultimately, it was a deal involving French laws. It was a little bit slower than expected, but so I would say, and here Jean and I have different timelines. I don't know. I'd like to say, I think for me, it took a year from the very first meeting that we had with them. He always says, no, we counted from the first time we actually started negotiating the deal. It actually took like 7 months. It's not that bad. But I mean, we both wished it happened faster, because we were just always aligned on this is the right thing.
So Billy, what's next for you? What's next for Hivebrite? You excited?
Well, I am excited about next year, because I really feel like now the dust is settled from the deal, from a new direction, and looking into 2025 for the first time in a few years, I think we have clarity, and we're going to be working very closely on first integrating the products and making them even more seamless together. Recently, I did a webinar with Pavilion, and they said Hivebrite is limitless, which is quite a powerful thing to hear from a customer. Obviously, Orbiit is a much younger tool, so we need to continue making investment to make that limitless, and kind of bring it up to Hivebrite's capabilities, continue unlocking new partnerships, they're inspiring us to expand our new use cases, and vice versa. And of course, continue investing in AI, both improving kind of our algorithms and continuing investment there, but also seeing what that looks like within Hivebrite, and what can we continue delivering to our clients.
Oh, unreal. Amazing. So you're back in London. How long have you been in London now? But the question I wanted to ask was, you're a mother, you've got a young family, you grew a business, you're growing a family. How would you, suggest or give any advice, if you can, to a young mother or young father of a young family whilst building?
Yeah, good question. You know what? I've been asked this so much, and I asked this question myself so much. And There's no easy answer. I think it's really the answer for me personally remains community on top of bulletproof childcare, right? We're always a phone call away from a disaster, kind of from school and a nanny. I feel very blessed and privileged to have my parents help a lot. I was personally raised a lot with my grandparents. So rope into grandparents whenever you can, and then lean into community. Nothing, and I see that a lot in Orbiit testimonials. People connect on a professional capacity, but also they love discovering what they have in common in their personal lives, and especially for working moms and parents. It was just great just to speak to someone and hear that I'm not the only one that feels like I'm failing all the time, that everything is holding on a thread, and just finding that camaraderie and just embrace the chaos and find that community that you can be really truthful with and go through this messy stage of life together, because it's exciting, it's beautiful, but it's also extremely messy. So just accept that. I think everyone that I speak to is going through the same.
Amazing. So one question I always ask to every founder that comes on the Everyday Founder podcast is, how do you measure the past between luck and talent? To be successful, any success, depending on how you barometer success, do you believe that it's more important to be lucky, or is it more important to be talented?
I think it's more important to be driven. I think it's about drive and luck. Probably talent has something to do with it, but I would say that's on the minimum side of the scale. I think anyone that's really determined to create a reality that they believe in will be lucky along the way. So go for it.
Love it. I love the answer. Bilyana, you have been my everyday founder. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, James.